I have been doing quite a lot of thinking lately. I was going to have to sell her. Time to let Maud go now, taking Esther to drift days. Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes, and you may be surprised to see me driving this ST170 powered Mark 1 Escort that I like to call Esther, based on what I found in a recent video. Now that aside, I have been doing quite a lot of thinking lately, and those of you that follow me on Facebook and Instagram might have seen some posts related to some thought processes that I've been having in the last week or so. Massive thanks to everyone who has been in touch with support and positivity following those posts. But basically, I found myself in a bit of a dilemma. And yeah, I've been doing a lot of thinking, but I think I have come up with a decision of how I'm going to move forward with my cars and with the channel and that sort of thing. And I'm going to talk you through the dilemma that I have been having in this video. But I will stress that I am in a great place at the moment. I'm in the best shape of my life, physically and mentally. You know, I'm feeling super positive, but you know, we have these times where we might not be feeling as good as other times, and those are the times where we start overthinking. But you know, it's a good thing, because once you come through that period of overthinking, you know, it gives you a chance to continue thinking and contemplating about where you are in life, but in a more positive way. And I feel like they're the times where you come up with genuine solutions of how to move forward, right? And yeah, I have definitely decided how I'm going to move forward. But in this video, I just want to talk you through the dilemmas that have been going through my mind recently. Now, all that aside, I want to let you guys know that the team of artists at my company, Petrolhead Style, have been working hard to expand the range of products available on our website. And there's a brand new design going to be launched very soon, which I'm really excited about. Those of you that are on the mailing list for Petrolhead Style will have already seen that design. If you're not on the mailing list, just head over to petrolheadstyle.com, scroll to the bottom of any page and type in your email address into the box, click the arrow, and yeah, you'll be kept up to date with all future designs. You'll also be entered into all future Petrolhead Style competitions. I've literally just launched a competition to win a free Mark 1 Lotus Cortina mug and sticker. So yeah, it's well worth joining the mailing list. But our latest design that we have released, this Mark II Escort RS2000 design, is now available in 6 colours, and we're going to be offering more colours of the designs as we move forward. So do let us know, you know, what designs you want to see come into the range in future. Especially, we're wondering which should be our first non-Ford design, and you know, let us know what colours you would like to see of our current designs that are available. Alright, welcome to my other garage where I've got all 3 of the old bangers out together. It's fair to say that up until very recently, I was dailying Esther way too much. That all stopped when I found the issues with her engine, which I think I've solved now. But just after I stopped filming the intro on the way down here today, I noticed that the revs keep hanging. So when you sort of pull up to a set of traffic lights, say, the revs don't drop right down, they hang on a bit. I have had a little look when I got round here today. Yeah, I just had a little look at you know, the throttle cable mechanism and stuff, and nothing seems like it's sticking. I also, you know, tried to sort of lean on the throttle bodies whilst it was running to see if the revs went up. You know, that could indicate that there's a air leak from the gasket. I haven't tried spraying anything on it while it's running yet, but yeah, it just seems like it's something to do with the throttle cable side of things or an air leak. I don't know, need to investigate further, but I'm obviously glad that yeah, the big issue that I mentioned in a recent video seems to not be quite as bad as I thought. Moving on to the actual daily driver, who is absolutely hanging. I've been driving this around for ages now with an open diff. The half shaft bearings and the diff bearings are very noisy. They actually came out of Heidi, and yeah, I've literally just been poodling around, you know, not sending it whatsoever. And you know, the plan was, or the plan is, to eventually dive into bringing this thing back to life again, you know, solving all the issues with the rear axle so that she's driftable again, but also giving her a tidy up on the body. You know, there's plenty of bits of rust coming through, as I've already mentioned. There's a bit down here. I think this was the bit that I just threw a load of fiberglass in last summer, but yeah, as I've mentioned before, there's a couple of patches it needs on the chassis legs underneath, and I always knew that the floors were going to need a bit of attention, but yeah, that's a bit worse than I expected. I'll go into that in a little while. Most of my attention lately has of course been on this thing, and I've been really enjoying getting stuck in with it, and it's been good for the channel as well, in terms of, you know, loads of you guys that watch these videos have really enjoyed me sinking my teeth into Heidi. You know, it's a bit different, you know, going back to working on a car with a crossflow in it rather than, you know, Z-Tex and ST170s. And, you know, I've tried to not get too carried away with this build in some ways. You know, the plan was, or is, to turn it into a nice daily. You know, I want it to be shiny on the outside, but at the same time, I'm not bothering to strip all the underneath and, you know, zinc plate bolts that you can't see. So yeah, the brief for this build was to build it into a nice daily driver and not focus on the performance. Now, if you watched the last video, you'll know that I found some more rust on Heidi's bodywork around the back here. So we've got quite a sizable hole here, and it's peppered with holes along the bottom, and another bit over there as well. And we found that it's had some previous repairs in the rear quarter panel here, and similarly around here, this patch is actually bigger. And I think a lot of people assumed that, you know, some of the posts I was putting on my social media recently were based on me finding that rust. You know, I'm not going to say it didn't bother me that I found that rust. In the same way, I'm not going to say that it didn't bother me when I got some negative comments when I suggested that I might fiberglass those holes. You know, these things do bother me, but they don't bother me enough for it to ruin my life. It's just a bit of a coincidence that shortly after I found that rust, you know, shortly after I spent 3 days making that last video, I had a bit of a couple of days where I weren't feeling 100%, still feeling great, but just not as great as I usually am. And yeah, I think some people sort of assumed that I was getting utterly depressed about that rust, and that's not the case. Now, I still may cut this out and re-weld it, same as the other side, and I still may cut this out and re-weld it, or I might fiberglass those bits. I don't know yet, and I don't need to know yet. As I mentioned, I think in the last video, for now, I'm going to crack on with things like getting the doors and the bonnet, you know, ready, you know, get them to, you know, this stage where they're epoxy primered, and then later on I can worry about what I'm going to do about these horrors that I found in the last video. Now, one thing that I haven't sort of mentioned in any of the videos, something that's been on my mind, you know, in the background, is the fact that realistically I could see that soon after I finished building Heidi, I was going to have to sell her. I definitely intended to drive her around for at least a little while as a daily, you know, make some content with her, take her to some shows, etc. Let my beautiful girlfriend Kat drive her to some shows. But, you know, I was sort of coming to terms with the fact that, you know, when I get to that stage, I might have to sell her to, you know, replenish my funds, and then those funds would enable me to carry on, you know, with my life with my cars, with the channel, you know, maybe buy something else to sink my teeth into. I hadn't thought about it, you know, in detail, but I was, you know, realistically thinking that this thing would get sold eventually. But more recently, I sort of come to the conclusion that actually I might not even be able to finish building Heidi unless I let Maud go first to, you know, recover some funds that I can actually put into doing the last bits on Heidi. And for a while, even though I've been thinking that ultimately I may have to sell Heidi when she's built, and then ultimately I may have to sell Maud before I've even finished building Heidi, you know, I've been keeping these thoughts in the back of my mind and just cracking on regardless, you know, because I like to live in the present moment as much as possible. So I don't like to worry about things until I need to worry about them, right? That's how I get on in life. And I think that most human beings just focus too much on past and future when they don't need to, and it holds them back in the present moment. And you guys that have watched the on track videos on my other channel will know about how I sort of view life in that way. But recently, when I wasn't feeling so great, I was overthinking, and then when I came through that period and I was still just, you know, being a bit responsible and thinking about the future, you know, in terms of planning, which is absolutely fine, I came to the conclusion that maybe it would be time to let Maud go now, to, you know, take some financial pressure off of me and give me some funds to finish building this thing. Now, it's worth noting that whenever I have these thoughts about selling one or more of the cars, or, you know, just, you know, thoughts of how to proceed with YouTube, you know, with my other ventures that are going on in the background, you know, there's always a bit of a dilemma. There's always like a good and a bad side to any sort of decision you're contemplating, right? For example, if I was to sell Heidi eventually after she was built, then that would mean that I wouldn't have my nice, slow, you know, potentially reliable, potentially cheap to run daily, you know, I wouldn't have a nice classic Ford for my beautiful girlfriend Kat to drive, etc. But, you know, if I didn't sell her, you know, then, you know, I wouldn't have the funds that would release by selling her. You know, likewise with selling Maud, you know, if I was to sell Maud to get some funds to finish building Heidi, I then wouldn't have my ratty, you know, driftable Mark II Escort that I don't need to care about too much. So yeah, you know, that would be something missing in my life. And I kind of come to the conclusion that if I was going to sell Maud, then I would need to start becoming more okay with the idea of taking Esther to drift days. But again, that has its downsides, right? You know, Esther is pretty mint. You know, she's getting tatty around the edges because it's been sort of 10 years since she was painted. But, you know, she is my show car, if you like, even though I do abuse her. So it would be a shame to ruin this thing, right? You know, I have contemplated, and probably will loads more times in the future, of selling this thing as well. This thing will probably bring in the most money, you know, obviously, out of all the cars, but there's no way that I'm going to get back what she's cost me, and with her potentially having a dead bottom end, so I thought when I was having all these thoughts, you know, what would she realistically be worth? You know, all right, it's a mint shell, but if the engine's dead, you know, there's that to it. Also, a lot of people see this as, you know, not worth much, because in most people's opinion it would need a bonnet, it would need bumpers, it would need an interior, it would need a boot lid. You know, loads of people out there don't like what I've done with this car. You know, they don't like the carbon fibre, so there'd be a very small market for this thing, and I doubt I would get much more than 10 grand for it, if I'm honest, which realistically is probably a quarter of what it owes me. So, you know, again, selling Esther isn't really a viable possibility either, you know, aside from the fact that I absolutely love her, aside from the fact that I spent 15 years or so getting her on the road, admittedly mainly due to me partying too much during that period of my life. So, you know, again, every sort of possibility of moving forward has its downsides. But if I'm honest, what I actually decided to do a few days ago was to let Maud go. You know, I'd, you know, come to terms with the fact that I was then going to probably have to take Esther to drift days and not be too scared of ruining her. But, you know, I thought Maud, with the spec she's got, even though she is a bit tatty, she, you know, would bring in quite a few quid that I could then dump into finishing Heidi. I gave one good friend of mine first refusal on Maud, and so many people over the years have, you know, got in touch to say that they want first refusal, but this particular person, you know, I gave him first refusal, and he came around to have a look at Maud, and it was the first time that I had a bit more of a deeper look in terms of how tatty her shell is, and yeah, it was obvious that Maud wasn't going to bring in enough money that would be worthwhile me selling her. Let me just show you how rusty her floors are, because it's pretty bad, or it at least looks pretty bad. You know, very, very orange. Now, I always assumed that this thing was going to need inner seals again and floor sections, so it's no more work than I was expecting. But, you know, when you've got people coming to view the car and they see this, you know, it really does look bad. And as always with rust, the more you look, the more you will find. And it's a similar story on the passenger side. Also inside the boot, which is an area that I did know about. it's in desperate need of a spare wheel well. You know, I did know about that, but potentially maybe it will need a similar welding underneath the tank. And yeah, the more you look, the more you'll find, as always, with rust. So it was clear that if I was lucky, I'd get a few grand for moored, and it's just not worth me selling it for a few grand. That money would get swallowed up quickly and I'll be back in the same boat, but without moored. So yeah, I basically decided that selling moored wasn't really an option. Another thing that I've known for a while that was going to need attention is down there. That chassis leg is starting to get very rusty. I'm pretty sure there's no holes in it or anything, but you know, this inner wing is very rusty. So, you know, it'd be a bit of a mission. Potentially, I'd need to remove the engine to deal with that. So, you know, by the time you start digging, the whole engine bay is going to need at least, you know, a quick restoration. You can actually see rust coming up over there. So yeah, again, you know, that's another reason why if someone was to come and view this car, all right, granted, it's got a really tasty SD170 setup, you know, it makes 160 odd brake, but you know, if someone was to come and view it and see rust like that, you know, it doesn't look good, and it just makes the potential value of this thing really low. So yeah, you know, it was obvious that, you know, selling moored wasn't a viable option either. Now obviously I could try and sell Heidi, but you know, am I ever going to find another really solid Mark II Escort like this again for the money that this thing owes me? It probably owes me little over 3 grand, and I've come so far with it. You know, loads of you guys are enjoying the videos on it. You know, when I come round here and just take a look at this engine bay and how it's coming together, I don't think I'd be able to bring myself to sell this thing. And again, you know, what would this thing really bring in? You know, a Mark II Escort that has got rust that we've just found. It needs a full repaint. You know, the engine's not running. You know, this isn't really worth much more than it owes me. So yeah, realistically, selling Heidi isn't an option either. So you can see that I've had a real dilemma, and you know, realistically, continuing the way that I have been going, I would run out of money before I finished building Heidi. So, you know, it was a dilemma that needed a solution. I wasn't going to be able to just keep my head in the sand and carry on the way I have been going, unless, you know, something really drastically happened with one or more of the other ventures that I'm working on in the background. And ultimately, I don't want to be in a position where I end up losing them all because, you know, I've let things get so bad that, you know, I can't afford my garage rents, etc. So, yeah, a real dilemma that, you know, I have been thinking about loads and loads, but you know what, I have come up with a solution. And, you know, it's not something that I need to announce on this channel yet, but you guys are going to find out soon. What I am going to do though is I'm going to film a Patreon video now to let the patrons know exactly what my plans are, because, you know, the patrons support me financially every month, so, you know, it's only right that I sort of announce to them first exactly the plans that I have got moving forward. My short-term plans are to basically carry on with Heidi in the same way that I intended to. You know, carry on getting some of the other panels ready for paint, etc. You know, get the cross-flow engine fired up for the first time and that sort of thing. So yeah, in short term, the plans aren't going to change whatsoever, but pretty soon I will be diving into my more long-term plans, which are, yeah, some would say a bit drastic. Not everyone's going to agree with it. Some of you guys aren't going to be happy about it, but as I say, you know, what can I do? Just carry on going the way I'm going and then eventually end up losing all the cars, or, you know, being forced to stop making YouTube videos. So yeah, I think my decision that I've got in my head and that I intend to crack on with at some point in the future is the right one. Now, one thing I will quickly address, a lot of people, you know, rightly or wrongly, will just say, well, why don't you go back into employment? Go back into, you know, having a full-time job, and that is always an option. And I am always looking at, you know, maybe going to get a job, whether it be full-time or part-time. But ultimately, this life I'm living now takes up all my time. Like, all my waking hours are somewhat taken up by, you know, YouTube and all the stuff in the background to do with YouTube, or my other ventures, you know, my other pies that I've got my fingers in at the moment. So, you know, going to get a job, although it will bring money in and it will help me pay my bills, it's not the be all and end all, and that would negatively affect, you know, things like me making these YouTube videos. So it's not as simple as that. But that's one thing I am, you know, considering as part of this new master plan that I've got. I think the ideal situation for me is going to be to go and get a part-time job so that I can just pay my bills, you know, my non-car bills, and then just try and still crack on with making YouTube videos and stuff in a similar way to what I am now. But you know, there's only so many hours in each day, of course. So yeah, I just thought I'd address that, because yeah, that's something that comes up quite a lot. People, you know, I even get really negative messages sometimes, you know, accusing me of being a bum and telling me to go and get a job. Well, I can say one thing, that I stopped being a bum when I gave up my day job, that's for sure. I'm certainly working harder now than I ever have. You know, every waking hour is work as far as I'm concerned, but you know, that's the way I like it, and that's how I believe I will get on in life in the future. All right, so I hope that explains the dilemma that I've been having recently with regards to moving forward with my cars and the channel. If you'd like to know my exact master plan, then feel free to join up to my Patreon. But if not, it's absolutely fine, no pressure. The master plan will be revealed on YouTube at some point in the near future. Now, I did actually film some more footage that was supposed to be in this video, where I explain the better news that I think I've had with Esther. And yeah, this video would have just been too long, so I'm going to put that in the next video, which I'm actually planning to get out tomorrow. If not, it will definitely be out the next day, so stay tuned to the channel for that. But for now, massive thanks to each and everyone who has tuned into this video. Feel free to check the links in the description to my social media, my email address and my website. Don't forget to check out the Petrolhead Style website to see all the new colours that we've released for the Mark II Escort RS2000 collection, and we're going to be releasing the brand new design and some new products very soon. So subscribe to the Petrolhead Style mailing list to be kept up to date and to benefit from our competitions to win free products, and to benefit from the discount codes that we send out to the people that have joined the mailing list. Other than that, got to send a massive thanks as always to my patrons for your ongoing support. But with that said, I'll chat to you guys in the next video.